What if flying saucers are not just a figment of imagination, but part of Hitler's plan to attack New York? What if America created a radar-invisible saucer, and the CIA invented aliens to cover up its secret military experiments? For 50 years, the world has been engulfed in madness regarding flying saucers. Their appearances have become so frequent that a Briton would sooner believe in aliens than in God. But in reality, flying saucers are not a fabrication, and they do not come to us from other planets. Their homeland is Earth, more precisely, secret military bases. The story begins in 1932 in Bucharest, when aircraft designer Henrik Wunda made an astonishing discovery by creating a disc-shaped flying apparatus. One of the first witnesses to this experiment was 20-year-old aviation school student Radu Menekatide. He recalls, "The saucer reached the ceiling and hovered in the air. I could not believe my eyes. Such a thing could not have crossed my mind, as I was used to traditional principles of flight." Radu witnessed the birth of the flying saucer, which operated on a principle based on drawing air downward along a sloped surface. This allowed for the creation of a pressure difference, which led to the apparatus hovering. This effect was named the Coanda effect and became the foundation for the idea of flying saucers. However, soon events occurred that changed the course of history. In 1939, World War II began, and the world rushed to create new weapons. Coanda's idea came at just the right time. The chief designer of the Nazis, Werner von Braun, led a project to develop new types of weapons at a top-secret headquarters in Peenemünde, Germany. Here he worked on creating terrifying weapons, such as the V-2 rocket. Only a few knew that 400 kilometers from Peenemünde, in Prague, the Nazis were conducting even more classified experiments. They were working on creating flying apparatuses that had never been seen before. In total, about 15 prototypes were built, each of which was tested and destroyed. At the center of these terrifying developments was the Škoda company. All flying apparatuses for the SS and Air Forces were produced at Škoda factories. However, in 1944, when Hitler began to suffer defeats, he needed the support of allies, the main one being Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. Hitler told Mussolini about his incredible new type of flying apparatuses that could change the course of the war, calling them his wonder weapons. In July 1944, Hitler invited Mussolini and the chief military advisor, Luigi Ramerse, to Germany. Later, Ramerse was shown a top-secret Škoda factory, where the development of a new flying apparatus was taking place. Today, at the age of 84, Luigi Ramerse agreed to recount what he saw that day. "Yes, I saw it. It seemed to me something extraordinary. The disc-shaped forms from the pilot's cabin in the center were made of plexiglass. Around it were jet engines all over." Luigi Ramerse witnessed the first serial flying saucer produced by Škoda. In the cabin, there was an image of a pilot who was supposed to operate the disc while standing. One of the creators of the flying saucer, engineer Andreas Epp, invented a disc-shaped flying target for artillery and proposed using it to create a manned flying apparatus. In an interview recorded before his death in 1997 and never before shown on television, Epp shared his suspicions that his invention had been stolen. Work continued in Prague on the creation of flying discs, and it was reported that certain success had been achieved. Ed, angered that his ideas had been appropriated, went to the test airfield to find out what was happening. He took a camera with him. Suddenly, a flying disc appeared in the sky without wings. Ed took a picture, and while he was translating the frame, the machine was right above his head. Ensuring that this design had been assembled according to his blueprints, he took a second picture. Ed was outraged at the thought that his creations had been stolen. Later, he would reclaim the laurels of the inventor, but at that moment, the disc-flying machines remained in the hands of the Nazis. The German flying saucer, as it turned out, utilized the Coanda effect, creating a low-pressure area that literally pulled it upward. It combined the latest technologies, including a helicopter scheme and a jet engine. This machine was fast, versatile, and could carry a significant payload of bombs. However, perhaps its most important quality, especially for a country that had lost many runways due to Allied bombings, was its vertical takeoff. The saucers took off on the principle of a helicopter, with rotating blades located beneath the body of the apparatus, powered by the same jet engines that propelled it forward. These machines were planned to be used for bombing strikes. Everything that was built in those years was intended for destruction. The plates were supposed to withstand the forces of the Allies during the last battle for the Third Reich. Luigi Romerse, the chief military advisor, claimed that Hitler, in despair, planned to use his secret weapon for a devastating attack on New York. One day he said, "May the Lord forgive me for the last 5 minutes of the war." Hitler wanted to unleash monstrous weapons upon the world, but his plans were not meant to come to fruition. Meanwhile, the Red Army was storming Prague. While German troops were fighting in the streets of the city, scientists at the Skoda factory were trying to destroy the traces of their work. The Russians were advancing, and in a hurry, the scientists blew up the airfield along with the flying plates and other equipment. The devices were pushed out of the hangars, explosives were planted, and they were detonated. The plates burned before everyone's eyes. At that time, an observer noticed 9 objects flying in the sky at incredible speeds. He compared their movement to plates bouncing on water. This strange comparison solidified the name flying plates, marking the beginning of a new era. Public interest in them flared up, giving rise to paranoia. The Air Force intelligence was concerned with the thought that these could be Soviet spy planes. The Cold War was beginning. In Rostock and in the West, public demonstrations of force were organized, showcasing the latest weaponry. However, a parallel secret war was being waged for the possession of scientific achievements and Nazi scientists. Whoever obtained these technologies, remnants of the Second World War, would be far ahead in military technical progress. A struggle for Nazi technologies began between countries, including Russia, France, and Great Britain. This is why the US government was so troubled by the appearance of flying devices that American pilot Kenneth Arnold saw in the sky. A secret document from the FBI archive stated that this proved that Russia had obtained German technology, including the production of flying discs. German technologies had advanced so far ahead of American ones that the Americans feared if the Russians had managed to acquire scientists or blueprints for this secret weapon, then they were now ahead. And as it turned out, the Americans were right. The Russians were indeed building flying plates. Andreas Epp, an experienced engineer from Germany, played a key role in the development of the flying disc. Immediately after the end of the Second World War, he decided to continue his work in the Soviet Union. Epp moved to Rostock, where Soviet agents, aware of his talents, offered him a job. For Epp, who had long remained in the shadows, this was a recognition of his value as a scientist and engineer. In the Soviet Union, Epp focused on the control system of the Soviet flying saucer. His task was to ensure precise control of the apparatus. According to him, the aircraft created in Russia was incredibly maneuverable and designed for flights in various conditions. It had a jet engine which allowed it to fly even in polar conditions. This was necessary as the shortest route to North America lay over the North Pole. America, gripped by paranoia, could not help but notice this fact. Even in Hollywood, it was believed that the Russians were plotting something sinister. A country possessing the secrets of flying saucers could gain control over the skies, and it should not have been Russia. Numerous saucers were spotted in the northwestern part of the United States, especially near the Boeing factories in Seattle, where American bombers were being built, as well as at the Hanford Nuclear Laboratory in the state of Washington, where plutonium for nuclear bombs was produced. These apparatuses appeared over all strategic sites in the United States, and this area was closest to the territory of the Soviet Union, where the appearance of reconnaissance aircraft was anticipated. Rumors of flying saucers began to spread everywhere, and they could not be hidden from either large cities or film sets. The government decided to eradicate these rumors by developing a clever two-step plan. The first part involved a high-ranking military official completely denying the existence of the saucers. Simultaneously, it was planned to launch rumors that the saucers had come to Earth from outer space. An important moment in this story occurred at a press conference at the Pentagon in July 1952, conducted by Major General John Samford, the head of intelligence for the United States Air Force. His task was to deny any significance to reports of spotted flying saucers. He claimed that the information contained no signs of a threat to the security of the United States. To support the theory of extraterrestrial invaders, the military enlisted the help of science fiction writer, Reserve Major Donald Keyhoe, who backed Samford's position. When asked about new encounters with flying saucers, Keyhoe replied that he believed they were objects of extraterrestrial origin. It was a clever and simple move. Now everyone who spots a military saucer in the sky will think it has come from another planet, while others will just laugh. The press eagerly picked up the theme of aliens from space. The magazine Life, which made Marilyn Monroe a star, also popularized numerous stories about monsters from Mars. Donald Kehoe's account formed the basis of the film Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, created by the legendary Hollywood animator Ray Harryhausen. According to Kehoe, the government was conducting experiments to create disc-shaped flying vehicles, and these developments remained secret. Moreover, the government supported rumors that the saucers were of extraterrestrial origin, which allowed them to divert attention from their own secret projects. It seemed that the government indeed showed great interest in the rumors about flying saucers. The film's producer, Charles Schneer, reported directly to the authorities. Once the script was written, it was taken from him, and apparently Child immediately passed it on to senior management and various specialists in the field of space. While America gazed in astonishment at the skies, the men in black were searching for the truth much closer to the ground. They needed their own flying saucer. Like the Soviets, the Americans were trying to find scientists who had worked for the Nazis. In some cases, they were successful. The Americans captured Wernher von Braun, the leading designer of the Nazis, and made him an invaluable part of their military machine. They also acquired a significant portion of the technology and production of V-2 rockets. Playing with new technologies, they realized that their arsenal lacked German flying saucers. This caused concern among the Air Force, as the Russians were ahead of them in this area. The Americans needed their own saucers to level the playing field. In 1957, luck smiled upon them. This time, André Sepp, a German specialist in flying saucers who was living in the GDR at the time, intervened. At some point, he disappeared from life in the GDR, possibly due to a divorce, but ultimately ended up in the West. He crossed the border, confessed that he had spied for the Soviet Union, and now wanted to tell everything to the Americans. The Americans immediately arrested him and began interrogations. While in prison, he started to record and sketch from memory everything he had done for the Soviet Union and revealed the Russians' plans for using flying saucers. Having secured the assistance of EP and other scientists, the Americans seriously began to engage in the creation of flying discs. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, almost all major aerospace industry factories, including Boeing, Convair, Lockheed, and North American, were developing aircraft in the disc-shaped form for various purposes. The California division of Lockheed, known for its innovations, was also working on the creation of flying saucers for the United States Air Force. All disc-shaped aircraft had a central engine, took off vertically, then transitioned to horizontal flight, could achieve high speeds, and fly at altitudes of more than 30 kilometers. For that time, this was cutting-edge technology. Lockheed engineers were working on the design of a device, at the center of which was a jet engine that spun a rotor, creating the Coanda effect. Once airborne, the device would change its tilt and transition to horizontal flight at supersonic speeds. However, Lockheed was not the only manufacturer developing this new technology. In the 1950s and 1960s, Convair was one of the largest aircraft manufacturing companies. Like Lockheed, Convair had a secret project, and their public representative became the Hollywood actor James Stewart. During this time, senior engineer at Convair Bob Widmer, who was one of the main developers of the BR-58 Hustler fighter, was working on new projects. In the early 1960s, this fighter became the fastest aircraft on Earth, achieving a speed of 2 Mach, which was twice the speed of sound. But Rob Piedmar was not only working on conventional fighters. In the late 1950s, he was tasked with creating the stealth aircraft, which was supposed to remain undetectable by radar at all 360 degrees. At that time, radar installations in Russia began to merge into a network, and the only solution was to create a disc-shaped device. The radar returns signals, and the disc-shaped object, or flying saucer, sends back scattered and incomprehensible impulses. The prospects of creating aircraft invisible to radar caused enormous excitement in the upper military circles. One day, mysterious figures knocked on Bob's door. He recalls, "When they came to me for the first time, I didn't even know who they were. No one told me they were from the CIA. Here are our badges. I was made a member of the club." Bob realized that this project was incredibly secretive. In reality, the CIA operated much more covertly than usual. as they were not only battling state enemies but also secret divisions of the U.S. Air Force for the right to create spy planes. Reluctantly, Bob agreed to participate in the project to create a radar-invisible disc-shaped aircraft. "I would never agree to such a thing again. Living in such an atmosphere, no way. I could only communicate with a narrow circle of people in established places." The project was so classified that no one was supposed to know of its existence. It was a so-called black project, the existence of which was completely denied. "I lived in absolute darkness," he says. Bob's project was never declassified, and all his records and blueprints were confiscated. Meanwhile, while the CIA kept Bob and his project in complete darkness, another aircraft emerged into the light. In 1961, the world was introduced to the first, according to its creators, true flying saucer, invented by John Frost. The U.S. military needed a craft capable of flying close to the ground, overcoming roadblocks and rivers. However, serious problems arose with the Aerocar, as one of the engineers from the wind tunnel recalls. "We tested the Aerocar in the wind tunnel, but it turned out to be very stable. If you throw a pot lid on the ground with the handle down, it will roll in place." The Avrocar behaved exactly like that. In fact, when the Avrocar was presented to the public, the project had long been abandoned. The Avrocar was not a flying saucer at all, but the first air cushion vehicle. It was merely a byproduct of another, much more secret and ambitious project that was directly related to flying saucers. John Frost was working on the creation of a huge supersonic flying saucer powered by a jet engine under the code name Project UAI-2, or Weapon System 606A. The new aircraft was expected to significantly advance aviation into the era of disc flights, and German technologies were involved here. Frost was aware of the military developments by the Germans in creating flying discs, which possibly underpinned all the aircraft sighted in various parts of the globe. Almost simultaneously, the CIA began funding research work on the concept of a flying saucer that they wanted to build. The military was thrilled with the idea proposed by Frost. By design, the technical specifications of the flying saucer allowed it to fly higher and faster than any aircraft or weapon system. The documents of the HVS do not clearly specify the significance of the apparatus, but mention its possible use as a combat reconnaissance vehicle. The flying disc Avro was conceived with unique flight characteristics that would enable it to easily overcome any air defense systems and destroy enemy aircraft. The military enthusiastically invested enormous sums of money into this project, and the group executing the special project became a closed community. They were allocated space at the test airfield, and they began work on the idea proposed by John Frost, which materialized in an aircraft of ideal disc shape. The senior designer of the project, who remained anonymous, was unaware of the existence of this top-secret group. There was always security at the entrance, and access to the facilities where special projects were being worked on required tokens marked with a special color. He began his work on Project 606A, a supersonic design for the United States Air Force. This apparatus became the most secret project in the history of aviation construction. Frost insisted that the disc shape was ideal for vertical takeoff. However, the actual flying saucer created according to his design was far from ideal. The design utilized the Coanda effect, and the apparatus had 6 powerful jet engines that sucked air above the disc, providing lift and incredible maneuverability. Nevertheless, testing the apparatus and its engines proved to be complicated and dangerous. Ray Takeuchi was appointed responsible for constructing a full-scale test model. Initially, it had a hexagonal shape, then equipment and all necessary components for 606A were installed on it, including the engine blades. Each rotating assembly consisted of upper and lower rings of the blade compressor and a central ring of turbine blades. The turbine blades were connected to an exhaust duct built into the stationary part of the structure. Each section was equipped with an Armstrong-Seidel Viper engine, serving as a gas generator for the central turbo compressor. This model was built inside a concrete building with the aim of testing the engines of the future weapon system, 606A. The saucers were supposed to possess astonishing flight characteristics, as the engine had almost 10 meters in diameter. With such a volume, it was supposed to provide lift sufficient for flight at a speed of 350 kilometers per hour, according to calculations. During the tests, the team tried to keep the most powerful supersonic aircraft in the history of aviation grounded. This was a dangerous task. For safety reasons, the rotor section of the apparatus was enclosed in a steel barrier during the tests. When John Frost pushed the engine power to the limit, all personnel were evacuated from the building due to the threat of an explosion. The fuel tanks alone would have been enough to destroy the entire building. The situation became critical when the engine went out of control and threatened to destroy the entire project. One of the engineers present at the tests entered the building and disconnected the fuel line from the running engine, which allowed it to be gradually stopped. However, serious problems began at Avro. In 1959, the main project for creating the supersonic fighter Arrow was unexpectedly halted, leading to the company's bankruptcy. John Frost was removed from his own project, and the independent genius who had created the flying saucer for Avro permanently left the company and moved with his family to New Zealand. Nevertheless, the United States Air Force remained dissatisfied. They still needed a flying saucer. If Avro could not build it, they decided they would do it themselves. The Frost supersonic flying saucer, like many other projects, disappeared into the depths of the American military machine. The latest reports indicated that Project 606A had been transferred to Bell Aircraft in Fort Erie. Since then, only rumors remained. After the disappearance of the saucer designed by Frost, reports of unidentified flying object sightings continued to come in. Many found these reports laughable and unconvincing. However, some of them were not the product of a sick imagination. The U-2 spy plane, developed by the Central Intelligence Agency, belonged to the classic black projects. Its creation took 8 years in complete secrecy. It would have remained a secret to this day if not for a disaster that occurred in 1960. The pilot of the U-2, Gary Powers, was shot down over Russia and held captive for 2 years before being exchanged for a Russian spy. The CIA archives related to the U-2 program indicated that 50% of the UFOs spotted in the sky were actually U-2 aircraft. These airplanes flew at altitudes significantly exceeding those at which, according to many, ordinary aircraft could be found. It is no surprise that sightings of these objects caused astonishment and fear. The U-2 failure proved at least one thing. Extraterrestrial beings from other planets became an excellent cover while your secret aircraft crashed or fell into enemy hands. And if your secret aircraft truly resembled a flying saucer, then this cover could be used for many years. When Frost's saucer dissolved into the absolute darkness of secret archives, American ufologists joined forces. At a press conference in Washington, organized by a private, unofficial group known as the National Committee for the Investigation of Aerial Phenomena, a long-standing dispute with the Air Force was reignited. The committee became the primary proponent of the theory of extraterrestrial flying saucers. It was led by the writer Fantaz, who first proposed the idea of aliens at a press conference in 1952. 14 years later, he was still searching for little green men. The head of the committee, Reserve Major Donald Kehoe, insisted that the Air Force knew more than they were letting on. He claimed that some craft, possibly operated by representatives of an advanced civilization, was observing them. In response, representatives of the Air Force, summoned to a congressional hearing, reiterated that they were hiding nothing. Air Force Secretary Harold Brown repeated, "We are not hiding anything." The situation seemed incredibly simple. Ufologists accused the military of concealing the truth about a possible invasion, while the alien military denied it. No one considered a third possibility, that UFOs could be secret military projects. Fortunately for the government, these enthusiasts were very well organized. They believed that UFOs actually existed, that they came from deep space, and that they were operated by intelligent beings. However, as it turned out, the creation of this organization was accidentally related to a group of shadowy figures. The board of directors included Roscoe, Hill and Cutter, the first director of the CIA, and CIA agent Bernard Carvello. The first manager of the committee was Nicholas D. Roselvar from the CIA's Psychological Warfare Division. When Kehoe stepped down as chairman of the committee, his place was taken by Joseph Bryan, also an agent from the Psychological Warfare Division of the CIA. And what about Kehoe himself? Did he truly believe in extraterrestrials from space? Or was he connected to military research on German technologies related to flying saucers? The answer to this question could have been known by the German engineer and creator of flying saucers, Andreas Epp, who switched to the side of the Americans. In an interview recorded in 1997, he provided an answer that surprised many. From the very beginning, the Americans tried to keep your flying disc a secret. Major Kehoe, who served in the Pentagon in the UFO department, learned that Germany was developing flying saucers. While the myth of extraterrestrials spread, it gained immense popularity, especially in the United States, where Hollywood actively picked up on this theme. The film Plan 9 from Outer Space became a symbol of this fascination. The myth of aliens even spawned an entire religion based on information coming from yoga leaders who claimed to be in direct contact with a cosmic intelligence. "Friends, we are waiting for contact," their calls echoed. Then, on the 11th of November 1987, this contact, according to some, indeed took place. It all began when successful businessman Ed Walters noticed a strange light above his garden. He grabbed his camera and took a picture, which became the first in a series of objects spotted in the sky in the following years. "Oh my God, I am tracking it through the lens," he recalled. When the footage was enlarged, it revealed something remarkably resembling a flying saucer. These saucers were seen by hundreds of people, including police officers and priests. "Oh no, look, what is that?" exclaimed the witnesses. Some of them claimed to have seen the aliens themselves. However, one person who saw these photographs expressed a different point of view. He was an expert in the field and knew what he was talking about. The story shifts to the town of Galbraith, Florida, where 17 years ago, the longest series of UFO sightings in American history was observed. Hundreds of witnesses were convinced they had seen spacecraft of extraterrestrial origin, but one person, Boyd Bushman, was sure of another. "Every time someone discovers something, it does not mean it actually exists," he asserted. Bushman, who had designed weapons for 35 years, developed a prototype of the Stinger missile and then worked at Lockheed, the Center for the Development of Military Flying Disc-Shaped Vehicles. He began experiments with a new energy source. "It's just 250 coils in a wire. We took the ends and applied regular voltage to them," Bushman explained. "What happened next astonished everyone. Just like that," he added, pointing to an experimental coil of wire that heated up to a high temperature in just a few seconds. Bushman believed this explained the white glow emanating from the lower part of the objects observed in Galbraith, which he thought were unmanned aircraft. If you change the voltage and frequencies, such a device could very well fly, and fly well, he concluded. Boyd believed this could be yet another black project of one of the secret military organizations. "I think it is just another division of our organization. Our people could very well be working there," he noted, recalling the numerous classified sites he had seen. "I did not make my discovery by chance. They could very well have done the same thing I did, and then developed this technology and conducted tests in that area," Bushman added. He emphasized that secret services have always operated covertly and are capable of much, even more than one can imagine. In the 1970s, UFO sightings became frequent, but with one distinction: many of the craft were triangular in shape rather than round. Rumors among witnesses spread like wildfire, and soon this man appeared, ready to shed light on what was happening. Jim Goodall, currently the curator of an aviation museum in Seattle, spends his free time exploring the forests. Over the past 15 years, he has visited these places around 80 times. His goal is the classified military air bases, where he photographs aircraft associated with black projects. To remain unnoticed, Jim uses a neutral-colored vehicle and covers it with a camouflage net for protection against infrared devices. On top of that, he adds some branches so that his vehicle does not attract attention. In 1986, he managed to capture an aircraft that the military had kept secret for more than 10 years. He recalls, "I heard something take off. A T-38 and then an F-117 flew overhead. This fighter, known as the Stealth, had remained in the skies over America for more than 10 years, while witnesses attributed everything to aliens." Jim shot 36 frames of film, but 2 of them turned out to be blurry. He admits that he was shaking with excitement at that moment, but the main trophy is one clear shot. This photograph revealed the mystery of the triangular UFOs. "If you look at the F-117 head-on, it really does look like a flying saucer," he notes. "If you do not know what it is, but it moves through the air, then it automatically becomes an unidentified flying object. Despite the fact that sightings of triangular UFOs have ceased, round flying saucers continued to stir the imagination of witnesses. Just 1 month ago, the Mexican Air Force published footage taken by pilots using an infrared camera. The video showed 11 objects, but only 3 were registered on radar. This raises the question, have real aliens arrived, or did these flying saucers also have something to do with American secret units? Jim recalls his good friend Ben Rich, who replaced Kelly Johnson at Lockheed Skunk Works. 10 days before his death, Ben told him, "Jim, there is something out there in the desert that you cannot even imagine." About 450 people worked at Lockheed Skunk Works. What have they been doing there for the last 20 years? Clearly they were building something, Jim wonders. At that moment, he turns to his son. "Dad, did you see anything there?" To which Jim replies, "Son, enough of this nonsense about flying saucers.